or good afternoon, Salt Lake City, and welcome to the June 14th work session meeting. We just finished the Redevelopment Agency Board meeting, and we now convene as the City Council. I want to welcome the members of the public who are in person and who may be watching our usual video feeds online. As many of you know, there is no public comment during a work session. However, please join us at 7 p.m. formal meeting tonight for a public comment opportunity. And of course, the Council always invites the public to provide feedback with the Council at any time on general topics by emailing or mailing us at P.O. Box 145-476, Salt Lake City 84114, or emailing us at council.comments@slcgov.com, or calling our 24-hour phone line 801-535-7654. Following today's work session, final budget-related discussions, the Council is scheduled to adopt a final budget at our 7 p.m. formal meeting. The Council thanks Mayor Mendenhall and the administration for the recommended budget and for all of your work providing comprehensive budget information and responses to our questions these past couple months. We also thank the public for engaging and sending in your budget comments. All the information is invaluable and is helping us arrive at a final balanced budget for the coming year. We will now move on to our work session item number 1, the informational update from the administrations. And we have the mayor here today with also Rachel Otto, Lisa Schaefer, maybe on the screen, and we have Andrew Johnson also on the screen. Mayor, the time is yours.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, City Council. We have a pretty brief COVID update for you, and then I'll hand it over to Andrew Johnston for the homeless services update. If we could go to the next slide, please. Our COVID numbers are increasing overall, and you can see that there are more people hospitalized in the last week and more people seeking emergency care in the past week with symptoms of COVID. Go to the next slide, please. Overall, though, it's a leveling out compared to the history of the pandemic here in the city. Next slide. Hospitalizations almost at the lowest in the past month and this week. It's kind of hard to contextualize that first slide once you see how normal and low things are with all of the other data. So it's important, I think, that we look through these different lenses. And the next slide, you'll see the water treatment facility COVID detection, which shows us there's not a spike coming, at least according to this data, very much flat. I think we have one water sprinkler watering slide for you on the next one. Oh, not quite. New York Times cases are up 34%, and we're the 19th fastest growing state for new cases, slightly worse than before. And nationally, community levels in Salt Lake County are moderate for positive COVID cases and hospitalization. Next one, I think, is the water sprinkler. So we can irrigate 2 times a day here in northern Utah, or I'm sorry, 2 times a week, pardon me. And the conservewater.utah.gov has resources if you want to tune up your own sprinklers, or if you want to call on entities to come out and help you make sure that you're watering in a appropriately conservative way. There are resources for our residents to do that. And we'll bring you this lawn watering guide every week that they put it out from the state. Is there any questions, council, or anything we can help you with regarding COVID information or drought updates?
No. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. I almost said Councilmember Johnston. You know, I don't know. Andrew.
Thanks, Mayor. Next slide, please. I'll be brief as well. This week, we do have a 97% occupancy rate in the resource centers, holding about steady from last week. Next slide. We talked about the rapid intervention team from the city last week. Since they started last week, they've been targeting seven camps, wherein the outreach teams do a lot of outreach to the individuals in those camps and match them up with services as much as possible, and also follow up with cleanings of the camps and the areas around them. And that's in addition to regular cleanings across the city based on reports and the need. And then Health Department will be leading abatements and cleanings this week around 200 South in the Fisher Mansion area, the Jordan River. Next slide. We had a resource fair at Liberty Park last Friday. You can see the Salt Lake City Justice Court was there, Rescue Mission, Utah Naloxone, Department of Workforce Services, and then special thank you to the Rose Park Community Center scholarship students who served 100 hot lunches, which is a first for us. They had burritos and some hot meals instead of just the cold ones you generally have. So thank you very much to them. And this coming Friday is Kayak Court on the Jordan River. And that's the end of the updates, Mr. Chair, unless you have questions.
I see no questions from here, Andrew. Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, for the update. We'll be moving on to item number 2, fiscal year 2022 to 23 budget, unresolved issues follow-up. And at the table, we have Jennifer Bruno, we got Ben, and we have Allison also, and Sylvia on the screen. Jennifer, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me see here. I'm just going to pull up the motion sheet that we are going to focus on today. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so first, I am going to give you a kind of a orientation on the motion sheet. It's a little different than a lot of other motion sheets we go through because it covers all of the things. It's printed out at your places if you want to take a look at it and kind of follow along. It's the giant paper and it says council motion sheet at the top. There's also an RDA one that I'll be going through after this. The reason we do it this way is because there are so many ordinances that are required for budget adoption, and we got many questions from the public. When we would do it just sort of the way of the agenda, we would get questions from the public about what does this ordinance do, what does that ordinance do, and so our intent with this kind of motion sheet is to walk through and have each motion be read by the council in a way that hopefully makes it make more sense to the public and the council. So starting with motion number 1, does everyone have their printouts kind of in front of them? Okay. And I should preface this by saying all of the supporting documentation we have now, including our key changes sheet, our staffing document, the sort of final budget documents, capture the council's straw polls through all of the discussions and as of Thursday. So everything has been updated since Thursday's discussion, thanks to the many, many different eyes that were on those sheets to make sure that we captured all of the decisions correctly. So we have all of those documents set now. And that's why we are so grateful that you guys were able to come to all your conclusions last week, which sets us up for a clean adoption tonight, not too much scrambling, hopefully. So the first motion, and the way that we've arranged the motion sheet is each numbered motion is the yellow highlighted line. And each of the motions has red text. If it has red text, that is what needs to be actually verbally read by the council. And if there's black text or kind of supporting text, you don't need to read that. So when I review each motion, we'll sort of clarify if you read the text or if you don't. Go ahead, Cindy.
Jennifer, you might want to touch on if we have council members who want to vote against some aspect of the budget, can we help them at the break with when they do that, or what
Yes.
motion they vote on, or
Yes.
that kind of a thing? And feel free to mention it here too, but we don't have the capacity to make 3 options for every one of these. So if you do have some specialty thing and you haven't told us yet, tell us now or at the break.
Yes. And I guess I should say too, the budget is complicated, and there are all of these motions. I think it's fair to say all of these motions are needed to have the budget functional, right? So if you adopt the budget, which includes revenues from the consolidated fee schedule, but then you don't adopt the consolidated fee schedule, that would be problematic, right? So that's why it's so important for us to understand when and how you may want to vote differently than we've presented it here, so that we can make sure we're not accidentally creating a situation where we have an unbalanced budget, because that would be the ultimate thing we would want to avoid. Okay, so motion number 1 adopts the city budget except the library and CIP, which are adopted separately. We've done this in years past because some council members have wanted to vote differently on the library than the city. So this is just continuing that practice. And what it does is it adopts the actual budget of the city. So revenues, expenditures, staffing, stuff like that. Motion number 2 adopts the library fund budget. Motion number 3, oh, and I should say that the red text should be read. Red should be read by council members. You're welcome. Yeah, thanks. I'm sure I didn't come up with that. Motion number 3 sets all the tax rates to fund what was just adopted in the budget. And we do need to read all the rates. I haven't revisited this with Katie in a couple years, but it feels like when we've asked city attorneys in in the past, because the rates are not published in the packets sort of previous to this, we actually were working with the state, county, and finance up until today, figuring out, are these the actual correct rates for our budget? It's better and sort of belt and suspenders for the council to actually read the rates, even though it's very frustrating and there are many numbers to read. So whoever wants to read that, just practice.
Dan expressed an interest in reading that.
You like zeros? Okay. I should add, in years past, council members have, agreed amongst themselves, I'll do number 2, you do number 3, that kind of thing. So not one council member doesn't have to make all the motions. Motion number 4 relates to CIP and debt service. This is approving the transfer to CIP, and it's approving some of the budgets within that fund so that we can pay our debt service bills and certain other items. This is a good example of the council has to read the red part, but does not have to read the part in black. The part in black is informational so that you guys know what else besides debt service are being approved. And if you disagree with any of those, this would be a great time to let us know, because we would have to adjust the numbers.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. So I think there was a question that, and I'm not sure if it's answered or not. Ben and I and Councilmember Pui were talking about 2 of the items that were not recommended at the CIP recommended items. And we talked about potentially that we could add those because they weren't huge ticket items, and we did have the money for that type of new projects on the parks or creating a new park. Where does that happen? Like, do we need to decide now, or can we talk about when can we talk about it? I'm not sure how that works.
It helps us if we do that before today, because then we'll have to change everything. But you can, if it's CIP, then you can have that conversation when you discuss CIP, which will be in a couple.
There's one discussion on CIP today that we didn't know if you would be ready to start going through projects. And then the actual CIP discussion is in July, later in July. I think the challenge is if you needed to add money to CIP in order to fund those projects, then we probably should have done that during our unresolved issues discussion to make sure that we're balanced for today. But if you are finding that money for those projects from other sources, like reallocating from other projects or reallocating from impact fees that are not proposed in the current budget, then we can handle that in a budget amendment and in CIP in July.
Okay.
But if you do know what they are and do want to mention them today when we're talking about CIP, that would be good, right?
It's helpful to know. I think the challenge is we're probably too late to add money to CIP right now.
Okay. All right.
Did you have specific projects that you were?
We were going to take it out of the park impact fees.
So you're good. You're good. So if you're taking it out of the parks impact fees that are not part of this budget, if you're taking it out of the parks impact fees that are just sitting there waiting for future projects, that's fine.
Okay, that's where, okay. I want to make sure that we're good. Okay.
I mean,
when I say you need to talk about it now, I'm like, okay, but I thought we talked about it anyway.
yeah.
So, yes, are we cool with the 2 things that we want to talk about, CIP?
I think
that were
that it
not
would help.
recommended?
It would help for you guys to talk about that in any time really, but also during the CIP discussion after this, and then knowing that you guys will have to fund those projects in a budget amendment, because it'll take a budget amendment to pull money out of the parks impact fee account rather than the annual budget. Does that make sense?
Can you clarify process for me? Budget amendment has to be initiated in the executive branch.
No.
Nope.
No?
Yep.
Okay.
You guys
Perfect.
can do it.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, we try to, have efficiency, and we'll frequently have council added items added to theirs, but there's nothing precluding the council from establishing their own budget amendment.
Okay, great, thank you.
And one thing you'll probably want to do is share the topics so that we can work with the administration to check to be sure if 100% is covered by impact fees or like only 10% is covered by impact fees. It varies depending on what the nature of the project is. So we can help with that.
Great, thank you.
And it sounds like Ben has already worked on some of that outreach with knowing what projects you're interested in, and so the administration has preliminarily said that they're 100% eligible. So which is great, because then that simplifies the funding source needs.
Great, perfect, thank you.
Okay, so then The next item is probably the item we need to spend the most time on today. This is the legislative intent and/or interim study items. The council only needs to read in the line in red. And so this is just going through the text of all of the legislative intent statements. We went through most of them last week, and so I won't read all the words unless the chair wants me to. And 2 intents have come up since the packets were published, and so first, maybe I'll give an opportunity for anyone to ask questions about the ones that are on the big motion sheet, and then we can switch to the ones that were added. And then I should clarify, because we didn't know if there were going to be any wording changes on this motion sheet, we will have reprinted motion sheets with any intents that are added so that they're all in one place.
So council, any questions about the back of the 14 by 17, 18 by 24?
It's motion number 5, everything under motion number 5.
Which is all on the back page, and then there's
Then there's like the annex.
Then there's
but
the
the annex will be incorporated into the big motion sheet.
I have a question about the order of this. Like, is it in order of
It
priority?
is not
or
in
is it
any order
just-
whatsoever.
Okay.
No order whatsoever.
All right. So we expect that we're going to accomplish this for next year.
And there was
Or-
a council request last year to then, once you see them again, once they've been adopted, to organize them by department for
Okay.
easier reading. So that'll eventually happen, but not right now.
Okay, great. Thanks, Allison.
Now, does this usurp any standing legislative intents currently?
I think that if there were any that were contradictory to previous legislative intents, our staff would have identified those. There aren't any that are contradictory. In fact, many kind of build on some previous legislative intents. So, yeah, I think that the intents that we've recommended to leave open would stay open, and then these would be added to that.
I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to apologize for how obnoxious it is because of the date, but I'm going to assume that Ben, with his encyclopedic knowledge, already has the answer to this. Do we have an active legislative intent regarding native plants and addressing our, I'm thinking particularly northwest quadrant things we're putting on a lot. I'd love it to be urban canopy and not grass.
We do not.
Allison's
be
our
the-
legislative intent
Can I be the
encyclopedia.
pain in the butt who requests one?
Isn't the administration coming back to us with an update on the?
Is it being worked on elsewhere?
Yeah,
There's a legislative intent that references asking the administration to come back with intent of the council to ask the administration to evaluate water usage in the city and make recommendations for water conservation in future projects.
Can we explicitly list out in that legislative intent, including a native plant ordinance for landscaping?
and you're talking about the parking strip and.
I mean, I want it to apply everywhere, but I'm thinking particularly out in the northwest quadrant where we're about to have a whole bunch of things that don't need Kentucky bluegrass around them.
Yeah, and I believe, yes, and I agree with this 100% though, but I believe that the administration was working on this to update the parking strip, since it's one of the things I've been pushing for, on the front, you know, the ordinance that requires greenery, and to update that to do it correctly. Obviously, I don't know if we can require private people to do things in their own yard.
But I know that as part of the permissions we're going to be granting in these zoning changes, we could have, this could be,
You don't need to do it right today because we know, I think we know what you
You
mean.
know, it's an interest.
Okay.
And we know, we can figure
Okay.
out when to do that, yes.
thank you. It just came up a lot
Is
this
that-
It
week
could
for
be
me.
also be part of our
Figure that
contract that
out.
we have with them too.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
so I'm kind of looking around the council. Are there any other questions about the additional intents that you may not have received recently?
So, Mr. Chair, if you want me to share those on the screen, I can share those.
Please.
The ones that were raised today were the legislative intent governing donations to the city.
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, so Councilmember Pui is working with a contributor right now, and other council members have had this experience, but our city donation ordinance was written many years ago by our office, and it is very cumbersome, and it occasionally discourages people from contributing. And so the city attorney's office suggested that the fastest way to resolve it is to do an intent asking the administration to come up with some tracking, taking the best parts of the ordinance, which are the tracking pieces, and ask the administration if they would work on that. And then the administration asking the administration and the attorney's office to work together to come up with a replacement ordinance. And then this also expresses your intent that at your earliest opportunity you would rescind that ordinance. So this is a quick action, but it's been a long time in coming. We just haven't gotten to it. So if we could encourage your indulgence on that, we'd appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah, stress on the urgency. I mean, there's a good opportunity here for a big impact in the community.
Can we rescind it tonight?
No, it's not been added to your agenda.
Yeah, that's our problem, is we figured it out too late. But you're expressing your intent to do that, so that is the best we can come up with.
Thank you, Cindy.
Okay, so we'll add that one to the big motion sheet that we'll print out for the 7 o'clock meeting. The next additional legislative intent is a rotating auditing of each city department. This is kind of formalizing sort of informal discussion that the council had during unresolved issues. You decided not to add money to the budget because the council office budget already includes an auditing line item. That's the role of the council, and we do audits all the time for different specific reasons. We just recently completed an audit of the building services department. We've done ones recently on golf and on planning, and so it would just be sort of formalizing the intent of the council to do that intentionally.
I want to say a few words about it. I think that's was what my intent was last week when I was talking about that it is our job to look at all pockets of money in the city, the budget, intentionally, thoroughly, so that we understand where we're standing. We understand if, we truly need more taxes or more fees or anything that we need to serve the public. And I think this is what having an audit, an outside party audit to help us understand where we're at, makes me comfortable moving forward with budgets year after year, where I know we will be looking deeper, because that's our job. We need to understand the system better. And it's not, I want to steer away from maybe a misspeaking last week of myself, saying that I didn't get enough information from staff. I was not criticizing the staff. I was, in a way, criticizing the system. Like, maybe we need to look deeper as a system, and I didn't feel like we were doing that for a while now. So this would make me a little bit more comfortable if the rest of the council will feel, will be inclined to say yes to this.
Which number is this?
This is on the extra page, so it's not numbered because it came up today. So there's a small sheet,
Yeah.
and it's on the screen as well. If
Be number O. This will
Sorry.
be O.
Yep.
sorry.
N
Oh, yeah, I
O
read this already.
M. Oh. Oh. I stopped here. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I guess I should look at that one.
So I think this is great. I just wanted to clarify, for my understanding, but also the public's, it's not that the council has stopped doing auditing.
Right.
It's just that we've done it maybe on a more ad hoc basis or as needed basis, and this intent would be to do it more regularly on some type of a schedule. Is that
Yeah, and
fair to say?
This is, and the council has gone off and on about how they do their audits based on need, and this is just saying we're going to rotate through all of the departments, and all of this is in addition to the annual financial audit that the council is in charge of, and that is completed by an outside accounting firm every year and filed officially with the state. So.
That's required by state law. And
Yeah.
Are we giving ourselves permission to, if we decide that one department, it looks in order and we don't need to that year, are we giving ourselves the flexibility to say, you know what, that's not the best investment of our resources to do it this year?
It's always up to the council, and a council can't bind a future council, so you're just expressing your intent
Okay.
that this is the path that you want us to go on and telling us some of the things that you want. We tried in the language that was suggested by Council Valdemoros to be sure we were capturing some of the other issues that have been raised by council members, like the metrics.
And then the other question is, we're saying departments, but
We say
going-
divisions, departments,
Thank you. Okay.
functions.
And functions.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, we're, right
it's
now
just
we're
the
saying
title. The
departments.
title's
Okay, yeah,
short,
just
because
confirming.
otherwise it would just be all the words.
Yeah, like, because CAN is never going to be audited with the same level of scrutiny as other departments, if that's true. Like, we
Right,
have to
no,
acknowledge
yeah.
different places have different thresholds.
Yep, and so you may choose, and there may be something where, say, one year you are doing public services, but some issue comes up and you may choose to do a division of another department at the
Perfect.
same time. And
Perfect,
you can do that.
thank you.
To just kind of get a the pulse on this, is a thumbs up for this?
I have a question still. Who will pay for these audits? We will pay
We
for them?
have a line item in our budget that is available for that purpose, and there are times when it isn't enough money to do an audit, and in that case, then we would come back to you and tell you that, and then you could determine whether to cut back the scope of the audit or to add some money in a budget opening.
I would also clarify that because we have auditing firms on contract, we have standing contracts with 2 auditing firms, we are able to encumber money from those contracts. So each year we've been building up money in those encumbrances to respond to different things that come up. And actually that's how we ended up paying for the audit of the police department without having to come back to you guys for a budget amendment, is because we had some money saved there.
Okay, and then my second question is what were the reasons that previous councils went away from doing this, from doing auditing in this particular
It
way?
wasn't a conscious ending a program or anything like that. I think they got through most of the departments, and then they just started focusing on functions. And so the functions, like they did RDA and planning, building services.
I remember
And then
fire.
Fire was longer ago, yeah. But it's interesting because public utilities and other departments still occasionally refer to the findings of the council audits. So we've had some very solid audits. And then the police, that was the last one. And there's a lot more work that can be done in association with that. So it's more that you just went on an as-needed basis as, so.
Okay.
And there have been times when one council might suggest an audit as part of the budget, and others would say, yeah, that doesn't really rise to the level that I feel like we need an audit. So there's been discussion, but not decisions, except on the building services and police in the most recent years.
Okay, sorry, I do have another question.
Oh.
Oh my God, I'm sorry, I lost it. I was waiting until you were done talking, but it was something that you mentioned, so I'm sorry, we're gonna have to come back to me.
Councilmember Pui?
No, I just want to, obviously finding efficiencies is important to, we need to always be striving for that. I also, and we need to find, if there are inefficiencies and because we need to be responsible with the public money and the public trust. And but I also want to just say, and this was my first budget. And I felt like the support of the council staff and the questions that the administration answered for us, we did go in depth. We did go in depth in trying to find efficiencies. We were trying to find savings, and we did find some things that the council agree. And I believe that this is good practice, and I support this. But I think it is. I think we have fulfilled our role as far as going in depth into this budget and trying to balance what the neighbors and the constituencies of Salt Lake City are asking. At the same time, we should always be looking at this, and I support this wholeheartedly.
Chris now has.
So Chris doesn't forget, Amy.
Thank you. So we already have the waste reporting website or third-party
Right,
thing that we
that's
use.
something the council funded,
Okay, how does that relate to this and what we're doing?
There are all kinds of tools that the council has at their disposal that operate automatically, and that's one that the council funded several years ago, and it functions. There's a team of 5 people, and our office is on the team with the city attorney's office and finance and the mayor's office to vet all of the items that come in through that. And so we get those individually, and they're investigated or they're referred to an outside agency. Usually, I'd say more often than not, they're things that people could use help with another governmental entity, or disputes that are more private, but we have had some that relate to city efficiencies and that type of a thing. So that's one tool. Another tool is just your general oversight, and we try in the staff reports to raise any issues that come up relating to that. And then there are times when the council members hear questions from constituents or comments and that type of a thing. And so on a daily basis, you are exercising your oversight by bringing those questions either taking them directly to the administration or bringing them to us, and we get answers in writing from the administration. The other thing that we implemented a couple of years ago is a pretty darn detailed list of questions that is sent out to the departments before the budget is sent to us, and it's a compilation of all the types of questions that council members have typically asked, and it's like, what service level is increasing, what service level is decreasing, what position was added, pretty much everything you could think of that you would want to know in relation to overseeing a budget is asked in advance and answered by the departments. And the other thing is that each time when the council is talking about issues and asking questions here in the meeting, our staff writes them down, the administration writes them down, they compare notes later to be sure they've captured everything, and then the administration gives answers back in writing. So there's a pretty deep level of oversight, legislative oversight, much more so than most cities. But we can always do better, and the audit is one more tool.
And if I could add, Cindy, I think that what an outside audit might do in addition to all of the things that Cindy just mentioned is typically the auditors will come with some sort of national best practice knowledge. They will frequently contract with someone who is an expert in building services, or someone who's an expert in whatever field we're asking them to look at. They typically have kind of a vast network of former government employees who know which places to look in different cities. And so I think that's kind of the added value of an audit, is not just it's not just looking at how Salt Lake City does things, it's looking at how other cities might do things.
Okay. I think, sorry, were you going to say something more?
I forgot what it was.
Okay, just to quickly then, I don't have another question, but as Alejandro said, I support this because I believe that we should be good stewards of the public's money, and we should know about if there is waste or anything occurring. But, I would offer this support along with the message that I've always felt like when we ask for explanations about why something did or didn't happen or anything, I feel like we've always gotten very good answers. And so I don't want city employees or the public to think that this is because there's like some sort of suspicion or some sort of concern that we're not being given the correct information. I don't have that concern personally. And I feel like not just our council staff, but our city employees go above and beyond to try to give that information. But yeah, I think it's also good to have this information in place. So I hope that people understand that that's the spirit in which I'm supporting this, and not for any particular reason that I'm suspicious or something.
And I should disclose one thing, and that is that it's entirely possible that you will have audits that come back and say, you are not spending enough in this area.
Yeah.
So like the accounting program for the city, that was a big investment, and it will save money. So it's working smarter.
Right. Well, I think we heard that this budget
Yep,
cycle.
exactly.
So.
Councilmember Fowler.
Thank you. So I fully understand and appreciate the benefit of audits that are deeper. Like going through the police audit was amazing. I don't understand, and maybe somebody can help me, of why we need this legislative intent instead of going back to when needed. Because I think we're all really pretty good at saying I am concerned about a certain department or a certain division, or I feel like this is happening. And to Cindy's point, maybe it's come up that it's a concern for a couple of city council members, and then the discussion doesn't happen because other council members don't have the same concern. But that's kind of what we do with everything we vote on, right? Like, it's kind of how it works. And so I guess I'm just looking at this in a practical manner. We're saying to admin and legislate and like the legislative body that our intent is for you to figure out what your concerns are in your departments and then have a schedule of auditing that we will pay for. That's like, in some ways, sort of how this logistically seems to appear. And I don't understand why we don't just say, when there's a concern, like, for example, the police, or if Can or Hand or whoever, that we say, like we do with everything else, I have 3 or 4 council members that are concerned about this, therefore I have the votes, therefore we're spending money on doing an audit.
And you can entirely, absolutely do it that way or this way. Just mechanically, the departments, if they have ideas of efficiency, or they have things that they need to invest in or that type of a thing, they take that to the mayor. The mayor puts it in her budget, or they make a recommendation for an ordinance change or that type of thing. So they're free to do that, and we want to support them in that at all times. But one of the things that would happen if you choose to do this approach is that we would bring you a scope every time. First of all, a draft schedule that you could change. And then a scope for each of the studies, so to speak, because they're really more studies. They're not an audit in a financial monitoring sense, but they're more best practice studies. Bring you a scope, and then you may look at it and say, do you know what? This is a nothing burger. There's no, they've just come to us with all kinds of ordinance changes. They've just updated everything. We don't need to do this department. What's the next one? You can totally do that.
The other reason I'm in support of this regularly scheduled is, number one, it protects employees from any targeting. If someone in particular annoys the council and then we ask for an audit, it could be perceived as like us trying to retaliate or things like that. I like the predictability of a schedule because it actually provides for equity in this practice. But the other thing for me, the reason I stand in favor of it, is that during growth trajectories, we can inadvertently add a lot of junk food to the diet and not realize we're repeatedly consuming it. And so, as Chris said last week, sorry, Councilmember Wharton said last week, we have a great bond rating. We have great standing, but that's because people before us did really difficult things and examined things that maybe they would rather not examine. And this, to me, feels like one of those ways we safeguard passing on that same good standing to the next generation that comes behind us. I am all for exempting, but I'd rather opt out than have to opt in. It feels like we have to be too omniscient to opt into all of the things that we potentially, I know I have missed a million things during this budget season has shown me the limits of my abilities. The regularity of this safeguards in some ways against our lack of omniscience.
Okay, I think we need a thumbs up, we want to add this, or thumbs down, or just thumbs up, we want to add this. So, show of thumbs up for adding this to our legislative intent. 1, 2, 3, 4. We have
6. Great.
6 to 1 with Amy Fowler voting no.
Okay.
Councilmember Fowler. Okay.
So back to the motion sheet. Are there any other questions on any of the other ones that were part of the big sheet before we added the annex?
Yeah, I did have a question on number K, which is can RDA role clarity?
Yep.
I thought that we were already clear and we worked on that already, what the RDA is going to do with regards to housing and land development versus can doing more programming and CDBG and HUD funding.
We did, and then we've had a few hiccups in the last year. And so I think this is maybe, and I feel free to jump in, anyone who has more information, but I think it's an intent to resurrect those conversations because the people who were involved in that initial conversation have there's been turnover in some cases. And so just kind of reaffirming that work.
All right.
Sorry, I missed that. Which one was that about?
K, which is about can and RDA role clarity.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Amy, I just said that I thought it was clear for us that we had worked on it, but apparently there are some hiccups still.
And I think that that's very common in a government, right? And we even had that conversation earlier in RDA with economic development in RDA. It's there are always going to be overlapping opportunities, and so I don't think it ever hurts to talk role clarity.
For sure. Thanks.
Councilmember Fowler.
Given the discussion that we had earlier today with RDA, I would propose that if we're having a legislative intent for role clarity for hand-in RDA for housing needs, that we add the commercial development or whatever, the EDLF and the sort of commercial assistance programs, because we did discuss that there needed to be some sort of role clarity between those two.
That's a great idea.
So should we add it
so
to
smart, Councilmember Fowler.
You're so smart.
this one?
Yeah, just add it to
Should we
K.
add it to this one?
Because I think all three of those departments sort of work
Did you
together
capture?
in a lot of ways and collaborate in a lot of ways anyway, so it makes sense, I think, but I could be.
Yeah,
You could read that back
yeah.
to us.
So that,
Jennifer, could you read that back? What you?
So I'm adding some words, so let me make sure they make sense. Okay, so the title will be Can RDA DED Role Clarity. It is the intent of the council to further clarify the roles of CAN and RDA as they relate to housing and land development. It is also the intent of the council to clarify the role of RDA and the Department of Economic Development as it relates to business support of businesses.
Commercial
Commercial
development?
commercial development and
I think that's fine.
And did you want CAN to be?
And
you've got
assistance.
CAN, RDA, and economic development? All three?
Yes.
You got them all?
And so it's CAN and RDA for housing and ED and RDA for commercial.
It might be CAN too for commercial.
It might be. I wonder if we can make it slightly more flexible and
Okay.
just say CAN, RDA, and EDA to clarify roles regarding, so we take out that specificity of housing with CAN, but just all three of them to clarify roles with housing and commercial development. Because CAN might also have some weird programs that try to commercial develop things.
Right, they do the facade improvement grants. They manage that one, for example. And the RDA is trying to do, not facade improvements, but commercial.
That's a good point, yeah.
Yeah,
All right, so new,
for that.
it is the intent of the council to further clarify the roles of CAN, RDA, and the Department of Economic Development as they relate to housing and commercial development and assistance.
Yep, I
Okay.
think that's.
Thumbs up for that.
Okay.
You got
Thank you.
6, 7. Not myself. Councilmember Pui.
I have a little thought on J, water usage by the city. And it is with the last 3 words on the first sentence, in future projects. I feel like I would like to delete that. So it reads, it is an intent.
J, item J.
J, sorry. It is an intent of the council to ask the administration to evaluate water usage by the city and make recommendations for water conservation. And I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking this, and I tend to do that all the time. It's a big problem, but future projects, and I want to make sure that we are looking into current parks, and hopefully we just do it with everything that we are doing already.
So end it at
Conservation.
opportunities. Oh, got it.
Sorry.
Recommendations for water conservations.
Yeah, period.
And then delete that second sentence?
No.
No, I would leave that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What did it say before?
The idea was that they're looking at current water usages in current areas.
Projects.
They could have construed that as mean future projects, but I understand your point of that you're thinking of new projects. They're thinking of what's currently out there. But I think you're eliminating those words is probably good.
Yeah, it gives us flexibility.
Yeah, fine. I think
Great.
it's good. Any concerns with that?
Yeah, no concerns.
No concerns
Yes.
on this.
Okay.
7-0.
Any other questions? And like I said, we'll add those other 2 items to just the end of that, so it'll go even farther into the alphabet. Then we're on motion number 6, which adopts all of the other ordinances related to the budget. So they're listed out there, but you don't have to read them. But it's all the things. So hopefully that gives you guys enough of a orientation to the city budget motion sheet. That's what you'll be reading when you are the city council. If you could shift to the motion sheet for RDA, this is what you'll be reading when you are convening as the RDA at the 7 o'clock meeting. And we were doing this in conjunction with the city unresolved issues because the RDA is a department of the city, and we didn't have anything on the RDA agenda to talk budget earlier today. So, but you will convene separately as the RDA at 7 o'clock and refer to this motion sheet. So the first motion adopts the RDA budget with the key changes as shown. The main change this year was the $150,000 for open streets being transferred to the general fund. Then the second motion adopts legislative intents related to the RDA. So I believe these were sent to the council via email, and I guess I'll just throw it out if anyone has questions about them.
I'm looking around.
And the intents for the RDA function exactly like the intents for the council, which is that they are not binding. They're representative of a sort of hope that the council/board has, and that the RDA staff will come back and sort of report on the various topics.
All right, I think we're.
Okay?
Sorry, I'm not done reading.
All right,
I
sorry.
mean, I read it once, but I think language
Yeah,
might have
go ahead.
changed a little bit since I read it. So if I could
I'll
just
give
have
I'll give you a
second.
couple minutes. Yep.
And we didn't get these out until last night, so.
Mr. Chair, I have somewhat of an issue with B. I mean, it feels
B, Bravo?
B as in
B.
boy.
on the legislative intent. It feels to me, I mean, I understand, I think, the want and desire to maximize opportunities for meaningful involvement for a wide array of developers and professionals. It feels like micromanaging when we are asking to look at every RFP, RFQ, a request for master developer, and like that line right there feels a little micromanaging, in the sense that I think we're almost overstepping our roles as the executive branch and moving into the legislative branch and moving into the administrative branch. And I have concerns with that. For me, I would say, collaborate to prioritize equity and inclusion in the board's policy oversight and budget decisions. I mean, that to me is a policy question, which we have created a policy and can continue to discuss policies. And then say, in doing so, prior to releasing that, like, that is the line I would take out, and then just start at the board request options from the city administration, RDA staff to maximize opportunities for meaningful involvement, ... But that is my concern.
So striking the.
Valid concern of just almost overburdening the
Sorry.
process, and we could,
It does seem a little that way. Again, I recognize why we want it, in the sense that maybe, maybe the RFP doesn't say the exact words that we want, but sitting here and wordsmithing an RFP for every RFP that goes out isn't, I don't think, our job. Our job is to say, oh, you brought us a proposal. We've said what our intent is for that, like, a developer came to us, we get this all the time. A developer came to us and there's this opportunity to partner with them, and we say, well, here are all of our concerns, and here is the policy that we want to follow, and here's what this project should have if we're going to support it. And they go out and, I believe, do a very good job at saying, okay, I think we've crafted this to meet that proposal. And the other thing is, before, and I recognize that it causes a lot of damage if we get too far into the process, but if the proposals that answer the RFPs come back to us, we still get a say at whether we're going forward with those in some ways, right? And so it just seems like at some point we have to trust ourselves in that we've created policies and frameworks and guidelines to allow the departments that we're creating these for to go do their job. But again, recognizing that there should be more discussion on developers, the meaningful involvement of a wide array of developers and professionals. That I agree with. It's a discussion Councilmember Mono and I have had, not kind of having master development things, and maybe there's a different way to say that that's what we're kind of looking at, rather than trying to just, again, micromanage the RFP, RFQs.
So you would recommend taking out, after that first sentence that ends budget decisions, you would take out, in doing so, prior to releasing any RFP, RFQ, or request for master developer. So the next sentence would start, the board requests options from the city administration. Okay.
Councilmember Mono.
I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I'm not clear on where we actually, in our current policies, have that touch point with development. Because if an RFP goes out that we had no say in creating and no way of helping wordsmith, and to your point, that may be micromanaging, but if that goes out and it is written in a way that the outcome is going to be something that we don't agree with, do we just say, no, we're not going to do that? Or the only point that we can do that is after the developer has been selected by whatever committee the RDA staff has put together, and if they come to us for a land write-down or something equivalent, would be the
Sometimes-
only
sometimes-
time that we have to approve that. So
Sometimes prior to releasing an RFP, they will need funding for something like, I'm thinking like the Japantown RFP, right? Like, that needed
And that
money.
one, I think we did wordsmith
You did.
a lot. Spent a lot of time wordsmithing.
And so because it had a direct budget tie, that was what the council or the board used to say, I don't feel comfortable spending this money unless it accomplishes this, this, and this. And that was the touch point. That's not always the case, especially with land. I think land is the tricky one, where we just always end up in that back and forth of,
Can-
go ahead, sorry.
Councilmember Fowler.
I understand the reason that we want this there, but I also think in so many ways, this is a case-by-case thing and a project-by-project type of thing. So for example, for me, I envision a briefing on a proposal of an area, right? And they brief us on proposals, or it hasn't gone out to RFP, it hasn't gone out to RFQ, they're coming to see if they like where they're headed, and we say, yes, but we want this other thing, and this other thing. And then from there, I think that it should be encouraged that if there's continued concerns from one of us as board members, then we ask for that communication and wordsmith without without requiring that it come here and wordsmith. Because to Jen's point of wordsmithing Japantown, I feel like it probably took us, it felt like 6 months to even get that RFP on the ground, because you have 7 people plus staff trying to wordsmith what everybody's intentions are. And so for me, I'm just trying to capture the intent of what I think that you're feeling without making it so restrictive that we're like kind of in some ways cutting off our nose to spite our face, right? And maybe there's maybe we need to sit and wordsmith that legislative intent to really capture what I think you're saying without necessarily, in my opinion, burdening, because I don't want to vote no. I mean, I will vote no on this if it stays this way, because I just don't agree with it. But I don't disagree with the intent necessarily behind it. I disagree with how far-reaching it's going for me right now.
Go ahead, Cindy.
As I'm listening to the dialogue here, I don't know if this would work or not, but we already have the resolution that we apply to all kinds of city plans and big projects where the council has asked that the departments bring you a scope of what they're doing, so that you can have some input on that, so you can see if it has, if there are things you want to add or suggest or that type of thing. They're not obligated to take your suggestions, but it is a tool. They don't have to wait for you. If we don't have time for it on the agenda, they can just move on. But there are like 3 check-in points or something on the bigger projects, and I think RDA sometimes does largely the same thing, but maybe we could work with RDA to formalize that a little bit and tailor it a little bit to RDA. I don't know if that would help fulfill the need, but that's just one tool that I was thinking of as you're talking.
I feel like not telling or not setting the expectation to the developers and to staff that this is what we want to do and want to see when you put RFPs. Now it leads to wordsmithing later and going back and forth about what we wanted for the project and how we want it to read. And so to me, this is setting that expectation that from now on, this is what we would like to see when we have RFP opportunities out there. I know the city did something cool like that a few years ago, and most of us weren't here. Maybe Amy and Chris, you were here with the Avia apartments and the Maya property, the old Barnes building right here, where I remember the RFP, it wasn't, the whole process wasn't perfect, but I remember the RFP saying, we need a nonprofit group, we need a development group, we need, the tenants should, so they had affordable housing, so they set the AMI, and also we need to support minority-owned businesses, so you better provide all of this. So whoever comes up with the response to the RFP, you have to have a team of all of these things. So I feel like when development comes to RDA, we're releasing an RFP, that should be the expectation of like that good mix that will be equitable, big developer, smaller developer, big construction company with smaller construction company, kind of to encompass what we're trying to, what our expectation is here to change the needle back so that they know beforehand versus afterwards. But that's just what I feel like this will accomplish.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Fowler.
I know we probably need to move on, but Councilmember Pui just came up with a great idea that might accomplish, in his quick wordsmithing, is, so that first sentence says, it is the intent of the RDA board to continue to collaborate with the administration and prioritize equity and inclusion in the board's policy oversight and budget decision, it would say oversight, comma, budget decisions, comma, and any RFP, RFQs, or requests for master developers that may be whatever, period. So it's saying we work together in collaboration with those things, but it kind of makes it a little more vague. A little more flexible, not vague.
Would you eliminate the next line?
So the strike through that you had stricken
Yes.
before?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it would still start the board requests.
And start with the board request options?
Yeah.
So it would read, it is the intent of the RDA board to continue to collaborate with the administration and prioritize equity and inclusion in the board's policy oversight, budget decisions, and any RFP/RFQs or request for master developers. The board requests options from the city administration and RDA staff to maximize opportunities for meaningful involvement for a wide array of developers and professionals. Further, it is the intent of the board to authorize funding for projects that support walkability, are built at a scale to encourage human interaction, and include architectural interest and variety.
I would be okay with that one.
How does that sound for, thumbs up for the change?
Thank you, Councilmember Pui.
Thank you, Councilmember Pui, 7-0.
The immigrant strikes again.
If there are no other questions, those are the only two motions. Oh, go ahead.
So we're all good with the other three? I'm just assuming
Sorry,
that. Yeah,
I didn't realize.
Yeah, we didn't really look at the other, but any questions about the other three? I'll give Councilmember Fowler.
Was that just because you saw me doing this? I have the same concerns that I had with B with C. I think the words in advance goes a little too far, and the reason I think that is because sometimes we may have opportunities that board members just, like, because of the nature of being board members, like, I have a full-time job, and many of you also have a full-time job, but we have to, so if we have to either get information in small groups and set up a new meeting, or wait until we're all sitting here for a board meeting to hear of an opportunity because they can't even start a conversation until they talk to us, that seems like we're cutting ourselves off at the knees for potential opportunities. I can see saying as soon as X happens, you have to come back to the board, or as soon as, my favorite word in law, as soon as practicable, you come back to the board and give this information. But just saying before anything even starts, you have to come to the board, really, I think we are, again, sort of throwing the baby out with the bathwater in some ways of not maybe missing opportunities that could be there. So I guess that was my pitch. Now I'll help wordsmith. I would say to provide information as soon
As soon as practicable.
Yay.
I had to Google it to make
Thanks.
sure I was spelling it right. 'Cause
That would be my,
Right, and I agree with your concern because we could end up, again, just clogging up the drain because we're waiting for something in advance. And it's just going to also clog up our emails, and we're not going to even probably look at them because it's too much.
everyone knows how often I look at my emails, so.
So I have no concerns with that. And they, yeah.
I don't have any concern with that change. I think the intent of that legislative intent was that sometimes some board members, including myself, feel like the talks are so in advance with certain development, with certain area plans that it's almost that this sometimes it feels like the staff and the public feels like it's a given that the board is going that direction and that's what the board wants to do. And then we're put in a position where we are the bad guys or that, you know, we didn't know what was going on. And how come you can approve that project? Why are you not looking at that? Because it's a great idea. And we didn't really have a discussion nor had given direction to like, absolutely, yeah, go for this. You know, it is the board's decision that we love this project and you should keep the negotiations going forward, whatever that is. And so that's the intent of this, to kind of say, hey, we want to give it a little more direction before you go full on and then everybody expects us to do it when maybe we didn't want to do it at all. So, and I'm not sure how to wordsmith that. If the attorneys feel like how it's written will prevent that, then let's do it. I'll vote for it with the changes.
Because I have an issue with, I think, you know, this is like on the Tuesday after the board meeting, and they're looking for a straw poll, and we have another month. I mean, that's a lot of time for discussions to occur that they're waiting for us to give them a thumbs up on something. So I think the wording is fluid and dynamic there to allow them, yes, they'll get it to you as soon as we can, but they're not going to stop the discussions waiting for, you know, 30 days or 2 weeks or something like that when it's some of the stuff is dynamic and moving.
Right.
And they may not have anything to tell us at that point. So it's like, oh yeah, well, we have all those questions. Yes, we understand those same questions. We have them. We don't have an answer. So we're really kind of just. So I like the additional words. Let's go with a straw poll here. Oh yeah, we got Darren. Oh yeah, we got 7 Jen. So
Wait, I think the wording is weird though. As soon as practicable of any talks, probably regarding any talks.
Regarding works.
Sure. Okay.
But yes.
Thank you. See, it takes a village.
And so I think, well, I'll give everybody 2 seconds to read A and D.
2 seconds.
2, actually 3, 1.
Okay. So I think that covers it for what I was intending to orient you to. So thank you for going through all that. And we'll have new motion sheets for both your RDA budget adoption and your city council budget adoption at 7.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, Ben, and
Councilmember
Allison.
Peter Eschler asked me, can I throw away the paper? The answer is yes, you can throw away the paper.
And I also
In
want
fact, please do,
Let's
because it will get
recycle it.
confusing if you don't.
I also want to thank the council for the comments. Nice
LDA
job,
you can
council.
keep, and the city, like the bond list, the list of bond projects and CIP, that you can keep as well.
Okay, we're moving on to item number, nice work, council. Item number 3, fiscal year 2022 to 23 budget, capital improvement program overflow follow-up. We're giving ourselves, we're 45 minutes late at this point, and we're giving ourselves, we have an hour on this, but we are 45 minutes late at this point. So just a broad picture for the discussion at this point. Ben? Oh, and at the table we got Ben, we have Blake. I think Blake's probably on the screen. I thought, did I see, oh, there's Tammy. Tammy's here. And Callie, where is Callie here? Oh, there's Callie. Thank you. Ben, kick it off.
I'll give a short intro, being cognizant of the time. There is an updated attachment 5. It's the summary sheet listing all of the capital project proposals. It is still structured with the first page being projects recommended for funding by the mayor. And then the next 2 pages are projects not recommended for funding. And you'll know you have the right one in the lower left corner. It says last updated June 10th. So that is the most recent version. And if you need one, we have extras on the table in the corner. On the right side of the sheet, we added a column for ARPA. And you'll see the projects listed as eligible based on the review of the Attorney's Office and the Finance Department. If it doesn't say eligible, it's ineligible. We thought it'd be easier to just list the eligible ones. The other change is in the impact fees column. This is third from the right. And the sales tax bond and the geo bond were reviewed for impact fee eligibility. And as you can see, several of the projects are 100% eligible, and then 2 of them are partially eligible. A quick reminder on legal deadlines to decide. The sales tax bond has no legal deadline. So the council can modify, add, remove projects whenever you feel comfortable doing so. The geo bond does have a legal deadline, 75 days before the election. So for the current council meeting schedule, that would be August 16th is the last regularly scheduled meeting to decide. There is a benefit to choosing the projects for the geo bond and the dollar amounts sooner, so there would be more time to educate the public about the proposal and the specifics. And then for CIP, the annual deadline is September 1st, based on state law. And so August 16th would also be the deadline for CIP this year.
And on this, so on the CIP side of the house, we go through those in the July-August timeframe. We go through those, and we already have those pretty much scheduled out for meeting discussions on that topic.
Correct.
Okay.
We also have a follow-up discussion in July scheduled for both of the bonds.
Correct. Can I just, unless there's any other questions, I was going to go back to the impact fees. So the impact fees are eligible for a number of the geo bonds and the partial for the 600 North corridor. And those are sitting in the impact fee at this moment. They're unallocated, and the one-time use funding for those projects.
Yeah, correct. Impact fees are one time. The current available to spend balances are in the staff report. I think it's page 6.
Right.
And one thing to keep in mind is when you see that there's $14 million of parks impact fees available to spend, that is true. But keep in mind the mayor is recommending spending $1.8 million of the $14 million in her recommendations.
Actually, whatever, 12.2, whatever it was.
12.2 million.
Yeah.
If you wanted to keep the mayor's recommendations for those parks impact fees, you would still have 12.2 million sitting in that account without recommendations to spend.
Gotcha.
And 10% of that is like under $1 million, right? For the 600 North. You're talking about the 600 North.
Yeah, I would just for the on the sales tax bond side. That's all I said.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's not parks impact fees, right?
Correct. I was going to.
That would be something that could be that would be transportation fees.
Yes.
So transportation has less than that.
Yes.
The parks one would be pretty much the geo bond, looks like they're all parks.
Correct.
Yeah.
Ben, can you help us understand? You said that she's proposing 1.8, but I see under impact fees 3.3 listed.
So that's because the impact fee column is parks impact fees and transportation
Thank you.
impact fees. We didn't separate those out into 2 columns to try and get it all onto one.
1.8 from parks, the remainder is from transportation.
You got it. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if there's no other questions about the impact fees or ARPA, I think where the discussion left off last time was if council members were comfortable with the proposed funding level of the GO bond and the sales tax bond, and if there were projects that council members wanted to move between the 3 different funding sources. Some council members commented about wanting to think through the equity implications of which projects are in which funding source, since the council controls the sales tax bond and CIP, but voters ultimately approve the GO bond, whether or not it can be issued.
Right, and so, but we still have we can move between the 2 bonds, but the voters decide on the GO bond, and we would decide on the sales tax bond.
Correct.
But we could, the ability to move projects from one bond to the other bond is available to us.
Yes, the council has control about which projects are in which bond and the dollar amounts.
And the dollar amount, correct. Okay, thank you. I just want to, yes, Councilman Fowler.
Thanks. I appreciate this, Ben, in the fact of like having the discussions of maybe moving projects and changing things around. I would ask that we table it, that like in-depth conversation to a future council meeting, because it kind of feels like brains are fried from budget discussions, and we're going to have follow-ups in July, follow-up in August to actually like dig deep, as we do every year with our CIP, to dig deep into which projects we want funded. All the council members end up lobbying each other to get one funded over another or move money here or there. So now, instead of like just CIP, it sort of seems like we're doing CIP, ARPA, GO, and sales tax in all 4 of those buckets in that discussion. So I would ask that we not get into depth tonight on any of those projects. That's just for me, because we've done a lot of budgeting.
You're not going to get an argument from me, but
The only thing that we would have to do, and it's kind of too late, is decide if there was something we wanted to move to CIP and therefore needed to allocate more money to CIP. But outside of that, there's nothing that would impact the budget we're passing tonight, correct?
Right. I think the big question, the vague question is, do we want to put more money in CIP? And then from there we can
do that
we can move all of the stones into all of the different buckets after
and
that.
do that as easily through a budget amendment if we felt passionately about something.
We also already did that
Okay.
at the last budget amendment of the.
Okay, just clarifying that we're not tying our hands unnecessarily.
no.
I have a question about that too, Amy, about this. It looks like there's a bunch of eligible ARPA stuff. So if we were to ask the voters on the GO bond, like the voters, after today, right, if we pass as is, then the voters will vote on, I thought it was on the ballot for one, either
No,
this,
not until November.
or until November.
We have to decide which projects are in the GO bond by August 15th.
August 15th.
And so at that point, if there were things that were ARPA eligible that we wanted to take out of the GO bond and use ARPA money for, or vice versa, that there's things on the ARPA list that we want to put in GO, whatever, right?
Okay, great.
We still have, that's why, to me, like tabling that, the in-depth, in the weeds
Right.
discussion today kind of makes sense as far as like brain capacity. But to Councilmember Petro Eschler's point, if we want to move anything that we put in the general fund into CIP, we could do that today, or we could wait and do it in a budget amendment later on.
Great.
So the projects and the amount are what we would be discussing at a later date.
Later, that's great. I didn't want to tie our hands because there's a bunch of eligible stuff.
right? And
We
we,
thank staff for being completely prepared to have the in the weeds discussion,
Yeah.
and
And then not do it.
thank you for spending your time
Thanks.
preparing for this.
Councilmember Wharton.
Wait, hold
Councilmember-
up.
Councilmember
Hold up.
Wharton.
Yes, legally, we have to make that decision before August, but practically, if we're going to put a geo bond up, theoretically, we want that to pass. And if we don't give people enough time, this bond isn't going to pass. And we've seen that happen before. And if we build all these plans around the public passing the geo bond, but we don't give them enough time to learn about what's in it, then we're going to be in trouble. The other thing is, we as council members, once we put a bond on a ballot, are limited in the amount of advocacy. We can't advocate for it once we put it on the ballot. We have to have other, right? Or is it once we put it on the ballot, or is it within a certain number of days of the election?
Once it's officially, once you've voted, and you always want to limit yourself before that to education, so you're providing public information.
Right. We can
Yeah.
always provide education, but in terms of promoting it, like we are limited in how we can do that. We need to rely on others to promote it, and in order for them to do it, we need to decide faster. So if people are thinking about making changes to the geo bond, and I'm like, seriously, if you seriously are thinking about making any changes, I would like to know right now.
Can I respond?
Just to the geo bond.
I understand
But
that,
Amy's right about everything else.
I understand that, but I've been thinking about a budget for 6 weeks, and I've been looking at this, so I don't know that I'm absolutely, completely ready to say, Councilmember Wharton, these are the changes I want to make. I could say, I support the geo bond as far as it is relating to park improvements and certain things that are here, and then I am fine saying, as we kind of outreach all of the time, being vague as outreach of saying, you know, taking a straw poll right now and saying, do we support a geo bond at all? And then starting that campaigning of, hey, the council's looking at a geo bond, blah, 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 and then looking at that. But I don't know that I'm 100% prepared to say, these are the changes I want to make. But I think that there are potential changes that I want to make, yes.
So timing-wise, though, I just think the bigger concern is that if we don't, like, we are setting ourselves up for failure. And I mean, obviously, like, you know, we can't force anybody to say the changes that you want to make tonight. I'm not trying to suggest that, but like, if people are thinking about things, I think we need to start talking about them now. Like, we can't make our decisions in end of July and August.
I'd literally commit to small groups starting tomorrow with you on this, if you would let us get through today.
And I think 1 week maybe, I mean, we have a council next week. I mean, we don't? So, but 3 weeks out? Okay, that's your point.
Yeah.
Okay. And I already been making, you know, made a list on this, but I also don't want to just present that if other people are not ready for that. So maybe small group meetings starting this week. I'm very open to that.
But remember, I'm only talking about the geo bond.
Yeah, but there are some things, in my opinion, there should be flipped.
Okay, that's fine.
So that, you know, if touching one, I feel like it's touching both.
I agree too, and that is part of it, is that it's sort of all combined for me. So I'm fine straw polling. Do we agree that there will be a geo bond, or that we're all okay with the geo bond, not knowing what is going in it yet? Maybe that's helpful, I don't know. And I also commit to like sitting down and having those small groups. They really, for me, all do relate in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I totally understand, and that's like part of the reason for my concern about the urgency, right? Is if we have all these discussions and we agree among the 7 of us, but the public doesn't agree, we're going to be in for a big surprise when they don't vote for it because they didn't have time.
Okay, so I'm listening to the conversations, and I think I'm hearing a number of people that almost everyone's saying in agreement that we want to go forward with the geo bond. We just don't know the mix and then the amount, and we're going to kind of have some small group meetings in the meantime before the next council meeting on July 12th. And the same thing would be to the sales tax bond, which we don't have to make a decision on, but we're leaning that direction. Like the idea of the projects, not quite sure if we want the same mix or the same dollar amount, but we are in kind of an agreement that we want to move forward in both those bonds. Did I capture that? No. Oh, Darren, sorry.
I'm hearing all the discussion and understanding that people don't want to discuss this right now, but I do have two specific things that I just want to put on the table so that maybe staff can start gathering information that will help me with that, if that's all right with council members. So the two in the geo bond that I would like more information on are Glendale Park and Allen Park. And the reason why I want more information on Glendale Park is because I absolutely know that we need to have Glendale Park done. And if the geo bond were to fail, I want to know where the funding is going to come from for us to do something there. So my question is, what is the minimum amount of money that we could put into Glendale Park to get something done by whatever statutory deadline we have, and something that could be usable, and maybe it's not the greatest thing and it's not the Cadillac of parks, but it's something. And how can we put that in one of the other places? And Ben maybe already has an answer to that.
A partial answer. If I remember last year in CIP, the council approved $3.2 million of parks impact fees for improvements to Glendale. So there is funding already appropriated to make improvements there. It's certainly not enough for the full 20 acres. And the federal regulatory deadline to restore some form of active recreation on the site available to the public is April of 2024. That is not to restore uses on the full site, but at least some active uses, active recreation uses.
So I guess,
We're already moving forward on that right now.
right, but so I guess my interest would be that it's not 100%, because I think that is not enough regardless. So if there's a way for us to split that up, that like, okay, we're going to, in the sales tax bond or in CIP, fund some additional amount above and beyond that 3 point whatever to Glendale, and then the rest can stay in the geo bond, I would be interested in that. The other thing, I just am still not clear on what our future plan is for Allen Park and like what that $9 million is going to get us. So that's the one where I would like a little bit more information before I'm ready to keep that in there or figure that out. So I don't need an answer today, but those are the two that are on my mind in terms of potential either shifting, moving, removing, etc.
The council also funded in CIP a activation and historic reuse plan for Allen Park, and it may be time for that plan to come back for a midpoint check-in for the council, so we'll check on the status of that.
Okay,
That'd be great. I would say for other staff members or other staff members, council members, if you have other like specific questions, let's get those to Ben now, so we're not asking him the questions on July 12th when we're looking for answers, and that's our discussion point. So be proactive in asking questions, whether it's now or you can just shoot him a text so we can just continue on, because we're looking for we got to move.
Yeah, well, I wanted to kind of second Councilmember Mano, and I agree with you, Darren. And the other thing is like this sheet today is really helpful, Ben, like extremely helpful to understand where else we can find funding for certain things. And it looks like a lot of them are ARPA eligible. So I think that's the council's discussion, maybe not today, but if we don't decide today, but it looks like according to a sheet that I got a few weeks ago, we had some ARPA funding left over that wasn't allocated yet. So that's a discussion that we ought to have, right? That's a funding source to do one-time things.
Yes,
Okay.
two additional pieces of context on ARPA. If a project is listed as eligible, we would still need to work with the administration to see if it could be constructed in time to meet the deadlines for use that the U.S. Treasury Department has set. And that may not always be the case for some of these projects.
Okay.
The other piece of context is there's $26 million in ARPA that would be left based on the mayor's recommended budget, but the administration did share a 3-year budget for how to use those ARPA funds. including using 16 million of it for revenue replacement in the next annual budget.
Okay, all right, thanks.
But you're right, it is a discussion for the council about how to use ARPA funds.
Okay.
One-time
Right.
monies,
Yep,
thanks.
it is one-time money. All right. Time for a break. We made up the time. Thank you. Let's come back at 45 after. And we have Adam Zitello and Beatrice Cardozo, probably on the screen. Mary Beth,
Hi,
I'll let
Good
you do the
afternoon.
introductions.
I will do so. So Beatrice won't be able to attend, so it'll be Adam only. So let me walk you through this process a little bit. Thanks to the great administration and Rachel Otto's suggestion, we decided to participate in the Harvard student program. We gave them several different scope options, and then we agreed upon public-private partnership and them creating a template, not just for the area that they're going to discuss, but so that we can use a template moving forward so we can be consistent as we go forward with public-private partnerships in Salt Lake City. One of my concerns has always been, we're just going to throw out all these public-private partnerships and we're not going to be consistent. So we wanted to make sure we were consistent, so they did their work. I'd like to welcome Virginia here. She is a new fellow that will be with us for 10 weeks that's going to help facilitate this, bringing this more to fruition for us, and the template, the Excel template, which is amazing, in the path and the direction we want to move forward. So I'll hand the time over to Andrew and Virginia. Oh, Andrew would like sharing rights if he could. While they're working on that, one of the other things, as we discussed this with Harvard, they came and spent some time here. They met with community council members. They met with the administration. They met with 3 council members as well in discussing the issues that we saw for public-private partnerships and what their visions were as well. So we kind of did this as a collaborative between administration, community, and council.
Great. Thanks,
Wonderful.
Mary Beth.
Thank you, Mary Beth.
So first I'll just give a little introduction and background, some context. And then second, we'll hand it off to Adam after I do a couple slides. And then Virginia will kind of take over and kind of talk about how we're moving with the project going forward. So just a little intro. So last fall, we started meeting with Harvard Kennedy School. The mayor's administration kind of dictated finance to kind of spearhead this project. And we've been working with the RDA, with Danny and Corinne, and also public services with Corey Rushton, who kind of oversees the senior advisor over at the Ballpark. I've been really involved with this, so thank you to them for their inputs with this. So the idea of the intent of the field lab course with the Kennedy School was to advance the learning of the students and also to provide Salt Lake City with some strong research and financial analysis tools. During the next month of meetings, it was finalized that Salt Lake City had an interest in using private-public partnership framework as a tool to finance urban development. It was then decided that the Smith's Ballpark field and the surrounding neighborhood were confirmed as kind of the geological boundaries of the focus of the project. In the early January, Mayor Mendenhall presented to the group of graduate students at the Harvard Kennedy School. Out of the entire class, 4 students were selected for Salt Lake City, which some of you guys had met in person a few months ago. The project more specifically came down to 3 possible projects at 2 different locations in the ballpark. So the north parking lot, which will be used, or which the intended use would be kind of a mixed-use commercial residential development. The east side parcel of the development of the ballpark, which is also a mixed-use commercial and residential development. And then the south side parcel of the ballpark, which we're calling is the Beehive, which is kind of a extension of the stadium and like an event area for game days and non-game days to kind of host events kind of thing. During the, let's get kind of into these slides, sorry. So some of the guiding principles that kind of put us in motion into doing this was, the mayor really wanted to see, activation of the neighborhood, increase safety, minimize some of the downsides of the neighborhood, and try to get more activity into the area in general. And then the question that kind of got brought up with this is, how do we develop a tool that's the best way to kind of develop this area? And then, the objective is just kind of developing this framework that we can follow to kind of go piece by piece and make sure that we're catching all of our bases. And that kind of goes into what Mary Beth talked about is,
No pun intended.
the idea of this is definitely intent is the ballpark, and we want to produce something for the ballpark. But also, we'd love to take this template and start putting it into some developments into the future. So the next slide here is methodology. So kind of what the students did. So during the course of the spring semester, they did a lot of benchmarking with other cities, stakeholder engagements with local government officials. I think they met with some of you guys, some business owners like Lucky 13, and some of the residents like the council member chair, and just get some direction on kind of how the residents feel in the area. They also did analyzed a lot of academic literature, did a ton of benchmarking, and created a great document for us to just be able to read kind of some past examples of some different areas to get our base, especially for stadium and non-stadium developments, because obviously the ballpark's a very unique private partnership compared to what maybe a typical development that a city might actually do. And then the last kind of part of it, or I guess they did some collected, explored, and presented on geospatial data, which Adam will get into that and kind of explore some of the cool visuals that we kind of see, and just you can really get some insights in on the area with some of these. And then lastly, the financial model, which is really the exciting thing for Mary Beth and I, is to kind of be able to plug and play and to put in some assumptions, but also kind of gives us an output that gives us a data-driven decision that we can move forward with. It's not just a guessing game with some of these developments. So yeah, and I guess another part of this is that this study, so you guys probably all know, is that there's been like a ballpark master plan that was developed quite a while ago. I think the mayor presented on, and this is separate, I guess, from this is kind of what I'm saying, and it's not trying to overlap with anything that they've done. This is supposed to be an additional tool that hopefully will coincide with the decision-making within the ballpark. So yeah, Finance Department was asked to lead this study with RDA, Public Services, a few other individual departments. And yeah, so thank you guys. I'll hand this off to Adam. Adam, are you on? I'm hoping. Is he present?
You just said he's in.
Is he in?
Is he a panelist?
Host has him muted.
Oh, host has it muted.
Option. Adam Zatello.
So he's not in as a panelist,
Ben,
so
look.
reset.
Sorry, I think I'm in, if you guys can hear me.
Yes, we got you, Adam.
Excellent, thank you, appreciate. Yeah, I small technical difficulties joining you from Cambridge, Massachusetts, but I'm just really glad to be here representing Harvard University and the team that I was fortunate enough to participate with, and Andrew and Mary Beth and the mayor, and now speaking to you, the council members. So thanks for having us, and really honored and blessed to be here. As Andrew was kind of laying the framework for you, I wanted to drill in here a little bit about PPPs. And that's the public-private partnership. And just as a sort of a scope note that he hit on there, is there's lots of conversations about a public-private partnership. And we really took the more restrictive or the more academic approach, which is a particular vehicle. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. But, you know, at the very high level, the wave top, PPPs are very complex, right? There's legal, policy, financial framework that we need to work through. There's a lot of reward potentially on them, but they're a complex arrangement between multiple parties. And that was something that we kind of unearthed in our research and our working with your team. And the way we wanted to brief this to you and talk about this was around these kind of 3 dimensions of success. That's what our literature review kind of indicated. And this idea of a structural and policy framework dimension, and there's a locational dimension, and then of course the financial dimension. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that the PPPs really, they're output focused, and they are about profit generation. Not at the exclusion of other social good, but profit generation is a requirement of a PPP to engage the private sector to want to partner with, in this case, your fine city. So, and you'll see there at the very bottom, it's community needs, market attractiveness, legal feasibility. There's a rubric that we step through to understand this in the ballpark itself. So, Andrew, if you have control, you can push to the next slide. So the first dimension, and I know it's been a long day probably already for you guys, so I'll try to hit wave tops and be somewhat entertaining or exciting. But the first piece is this kind of structural idea, and this is around a framework that we use here at Harvard, is around project, players, and processes. And what it is to say at a very high level is to suggest that these 3 factors need to be considered throughout the planning process and need to be in alignment to the maximum extent possible, right? So you need the right project. Not every project is a candidate for a PPP. And you need the right players, right? You have to have the right type of developers in your city, and you have to have the willingness from a council such as yourself. And then, of course, the processes are essential in moving this forward, and they need to be in play earlier on. So I'll just jump to the next slide. And please feel free, as I'm not in the room with you, if there's any questions, please jump in and I can expound on any details. So in the upper right, you kind of see we're moving around this triangle very swiftly. But we wanted to dive in a little bit on this locational dimension of PPPs. And really, there's 3 key considerations we wanted to bring forward to you, and that is, of course, the site selection, land use restrictions. In the case of the ballpark, we really were talking about alcohol proximity restrictions. And then, of course, like the knock-on effects or the secondary effects of any PPP that you will want to consider as they may not be present in the initial planning aspects. Great, thank you. And of course, site selection, just so to be very specific about what the Harvard team was looking at is we prioritize the sort of existing city-owned properties. And in this case, we were really talking about that north parking lot and in and around the ballpark itself. And I won't need to tell anybody, you know, you're members of this city, that there's a couple really good things going for the ballpark and this area in particular. In its proximity to the tracks, the entrance to the ballpark here, public parcels nearby, and potential private developers that have been discussed in the area and are interested. And I want to introduce here, just as a framework, this idea of an activation center. We've talked a little bit about it with Councilmember Mano, but really engaging the neighborhood here. Sorry, Andrew, was that anybody need to cut in?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Yeah, drive on that. Yeah, thank you. So to bound the study, we really talked about from that activation center, a 10-minute walk radius. So here we're stepping into some geospatial analysis. You'll see the blue outline. This is, you know, at a normal clip, this is how far you can get in a 10-minute walk. And functionally, that's what we wanted to define the ballpark. I know the ballpark neighborhood and the ballpark has a very specific jurisdiction here, but this is the experience from the activation point. And just to point out that it extends over State Street into the Midtown neighborhood functionally. Next slide there. So now we want to talk specifically about the land use restrictions, and in this case, the alcohol proximity restrictions. And these, as you are more familiar than I probably, and I'm not an attorney, but the DABC's alcohol proximity, it begins with this idea of a community location. And as defined by the statute, our reading of it, of your code, is it's public schools, private schools, churches, public libraries, playgrounds, parks. So that's the beginning of what would trigger a proximity restriction. So you can see here in the study area, there's quite a few in the area, and we'll click to the next, and you'll have a closer look at those. So specifically, right in and around the study area, the PPP area, we're talking about the Horizonte Center, Challenger School, and the Utah Lighthouse Ministry. And right away, the first component of the restriction is a 200-foot distance from the boundary. So to understand this, we looked at the code. So 200 feet straight line can have no restaurants or bars. And again, this is our reading of it. Please feel free to correct as you see fit. But right away, you have some areas that are of the PPP area that we have to be considering when a PPP's sort of land uses are discussed. So you have some red overlap is what you're looking at in the PPP areas. And we can jump next, yep. So to dive in even deeper, there's a 300-foot and a 600-foot ordinary pedestrian travel. And bear with me here, this is a little bit tricky, but the light purple is this 300-foot walking distance as you would experience it on the side of the, on the sidewalk. And in that area, code suggests that there's to be no restaurants or bar entrances. Now we've talked, and you can be a little creative in where these would be located to step outside of that restriction, but recalling that it's the boundary of the community location to the entrance of the establishment. And then the 600-foot would be restaurants, yes, bars, no. And that's the dark purple area. So details aside, the specific here is that along these PPP boundaries, they will come in contact with this Utah code, and we need to be thinking about that, as we plan what types of uses for the ballpark you would like. And I know I'm moving quick, so again, next slide, please, Andrew. The final dimension I wanted to introduce here is the range and the secondary effects. And something that already, and we heard a lot in our user engagements, neighborhood engagements, is part of the character and what people love about the ballpark area is it's affordable. And maybe becoming less for some folks, but it's still an affordable neighborhood. And we wanted to present what we were finding in the data. So here you're talking about a $289,000 mean residential property value. And that's an assessed property value. We understand that's a bit trailing, but even driving that up to 350, if you think about the explosion of housing prices that you and we all have experienced, it's still a very affordable neighborhood in comparison to other parts of your city. Now, undoubtedly, development will come into play there. So we just wanted to present those as facts here, or our perceptions. So next slide, please. We also want to look about affordable housing. So these are 44 separate affordable housing permits in the area. The data we were looking at with your IMS team didn't suggest how many actual units were affordable, only that there were 44 separate affordable housing permits in the study area. And those were concentrated on 15 different parcels. And again, you can see the PPP boundaries, and the orange is where those permits are located. Next slide, please. And then ultimately, from a number of community members, we were hearing about the shelterless people who live in the area, and how this might impact their lives, and the development in the ballpark might change their experience as well. So what we wanted to return here is the SLC mobile dashboard data from 2017 to essentially now, February 2022. And what you'll see is the density, and essentially each one of these hexagons counts the number of incidents that have been reported or locations of the homeless that have been reported in that time period. So right away, you can see 3 different hexagons engage the PPP site, and then there's a number in and around Colmena and the other locations right around the ballpark. Next slide, please. And I know I went through that awful fast, so we can, during Q&A, feel free to come back and we can discuss any bit of that that is of interest to you. But here I think I'll hand it back over to Andrew in Virginia to maybe talk about the third dimension, and it's the financial dimension of the PPP.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
Yep.
So I'll talk a little about the financial dimension. The team developed a really awesome financial model. Right now, it's in the form of an Excel document worksheet, and it's a really cool kind of a plug-and-play document where we've listed a lot of assumptions, and it's from more of a developer's point of view. So kind of just understanding, hey, what would be the potential rate of return based on the cost, the square foot costs assumptions that we made. And we got a lot of that information from the RDA and a lot of the previous projects that they've done. So it seems to be very realistic numbers that we used in the model. And obviously, it's all, Virginia's doing a great job of kind of organizing that data right now so that we can update that information as that information gets updated and becomes available for us, and based on, what type of project that we're kind of looking at, if it's a ballpark or a residential hotel or something like that. So the next part is just kind of understanding, so what type of developments that we were talking about. So we kind of briefly already talked about, so the north parking lot, I think the idea is to, not necessarily take away entirely the parking structure, but add to it. I think we all know that it's kind of a wasted space right now. But there's lots of possibilities in adding some type of a mixed use residential / business in that area. And then likewise, if you see number 2, which will be the east side of the ballpark parcel, I think that was kind of the consensus was that there could also be hopefully another mixed use, residential / commercial use area there. And then the Beehive, which is where number 3 is, down at the south side of the ballpark, which will be used as kind of event space for game days and non-game days, and extend the stadium out further, and hopefully be able to host more types of events there, type of thing. Next, we're going to kind of get into, this is kind of an example of one of the assumptions that we can make, and kind of what I was saying about kind of plug and play with the data a little bit is understanding, hey, these different density options that, obviously, the more density is going to probably have a higher rate of return, most likely from a developer standpoint. But there could be a lot more negative effects maybe into the neighborhood that aren't necessarily a revenue driver that the city might want to see. But this kind of just, basic example of, hey, we can either we do a high density, a medium density, or a low density, and then we can see how that pans out from the financial model. The next slide, don't get too into the weeds on the numbers. This is just kind of more of an example of how an output might seem once we picked which density and the model came out. So I guess industry standard, the best rate of return from a developer standpoint from the Harvard team, and the advice that we get is that they want to see about 12%. So in this case, if we were to have a discussion with a developer, the high density case would be the best scenario for their revenue drivers. Obviously, there's other factors that can be put into this model that would change these outcomes. And then I kind of wanted just to stress again is, the intent of this project is not to see what type of PPP project would work on the area. We're not trying to force a PPP on the ballpark. The idea of this is to see, is a PPP the right option? Is it going to benefit us and a developer? It's not we're going all in on PPPs. This is, hey, we've never really done a real PPP before, and we want to check our bases and get some real data-driven decisions on this stuff. So that's kind of it for how the project went throughout the semester with the 4 students. And now we've been fortunate enough to have Virginia come with us for 10 weeks. And now we're going to really try to put this model into engage and really go forward with it. So I'll let her kind of take over.
Yeah, thank you. So as you heard, I was not one of the 4 students that had the pleasure of working on this last semester, but I was really excited about this project from the beginning when Mayor Mendenhall put up a picture of Salt Lake City. And it's like, wow, that is so beautiful. So I'm really excited to be here and to be continuing the project. So my role is going to be kind of taking the deliverables that the team worked on, the financial model, first of all, and kind of further developing that and refining some of the assumptions and building out a process to update the data and input assumptions over time. So if you want to use it for a different project in the future, it'll be easy to understand where all of that information came from and how you can update it going forward. And it was also developed kind of from a developer's perspective. So I'll be working on adding in some of the city's available funding tools into the model as well, so that you can get kind of a broad picture and assess the feasibility of a public-private partnership deal in the ballpark, and then hopefully it can be kind of more generally used in the future as well as one tool in the toolkit that the finance team has. And then secondly, I'll be working on sort of a complementary governance framework to go with the financial model. So looking at kind of a risk assessment, what are some different criteria to look at in evaluating the risks to the city in entering a public-private partnership, again, specific to the ballpark, but also hopefully this is a tool that you can use more broadly going forward as well. And then lastly, I'll be working on analyzing kind of a master developer approach versus a parcel by parcel approach in the public-private partnership. So again, that could be used for this deal, or hopefully that the pros and cons and some of that assessment can be helpful going forward as you look at other deals in the future. And I just also wanted to say thank you to the finance team. Everyone's been so welcoming and having me here the past 2.5 weeks. So I'm excited to continue on with this work.
Thank you, Virginia. Adam, questions from the council? Councilman Romano.
For or from the council?
For, from.
Well, first, I just wanted to say thank you to the team. I was able to meet with them a couple times throughout the process and sort of talk about the neighborhood and talk about some of the goals and priorities for the direction of the neighborhood, but also for this project. And so appreciate the work and the interest in Salt Lake City. Appreciate the administration for recognizing this as a group of students to engage with, and excited to see what comes out of this residency that you have here, Virginia. So thank you for choosing our city. And in terms of the outcomes of this, I can't stress enough how much potential we have in the Ballpark neighborhood to really develop the type of community and type of urban experience that I want to see in my neighborhood. I live in your 10-minute thing, so I know the neighborhood very, very well, and I'm so excited for the energy that is finally being put into that neighborhood, both from the council, from the mayor, and from the finance department and everybody else in the city and in the private development community, because that neighborhood is truly so undercapitalized, like underdeveloped in terms of the potential that we have there to turn it into something really great. So appreciate the presentation and excited to see the project and the ideas come to fruition.
You have just a question just for my education. We have a number of ballparks, minor league ballparks across the United States, and has this type of project worked in those areas? And what's the lessons learned that maybe in El Paso, or I even say even the Boston? I'm dating myself because I remember that place years ago, and it wasn't quite the same as it is now. And how that plays into part of in your study.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So I know the team that worked on it during the semester, they looked at a lot of case studies and research that has been done to see whether those investments worked out well, and whether they did have the intended impact of boosting economic activity in the area. And so I think generally the findings are mixed. It depends on the structure of the deal. It depends on the partners. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, and that's part of what's informing the governance framework. We're trying to look at best practices and the lessons learned from other cities to incorporate that into a framework for decision making in Salt Lake City. And El Paso is one we've been looking at in particular, because they have sort of a similar to the beehive kind of concept. Their big doghouse in the ballpark. So we've been looking at their revenue sharing agreement and what that looks like to inform what it could look like here.
Yeah, Virginia, if I could, I'd just amplify. We began, really our whole effort was around case studies, was about, where has this worked, where has it not worked? And I think the truth is it's nuanced, right? It's partially worked and it's partially not worked everywhere. There isn't a perfect playbook to go by, which I don't want to say that Salt Lake is breaking new ground, but every time you do a PPP, from our research, it indicates that it's unique. It's almost the first time we've ever done it, right? So part of what our deliverables from this semester is a checklist, kind of things to think about as you're going through it, and we placed a couple of different case studies in that framework and provided that information back. So a place like Denver, Colorado had done a great job. It hit most of the sort of priority boxes, checked them in a positive way. And then there were a couple other cities that struggled to do it. And I think we can learn from that, and we can pass on those learnings here through Virginia to your city.
Councilmember Fowler. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Virginia.
Can I ask, just off the top of your head, who struggled? If you remember. I won't throw any city under the bus. I'm just curious.
We can certainly provide that information. I wouldn't say that we didn't find that any city had a complete failure. Only that certain aspects, whether they were the political will or maybe the sparsity of private partners, maybe they failed on those dimensions, but really hit it on several others. But I could tell you that we looked at Phoenix, we looked at Cleveland, we looked at a couple smaller market teams as well. And to be specific, we were really looking around PPPs and sports facilities. So not exclusively baseball, but sorry to give you a wiggle of an answer, but we can give you that data that we have on that if you'd like it.
Yeah, I think it would just be interesting because for many of us, and as we oftentimes go to other cities to see what they've done right and done wrong, and as we continue down this path, it may be something that we kind of look at going and meeting with like developers in that city or city officials or things like that we've done with other projects throughout our city to go make that partnership and kind of learn from that. So it might be interesting. It would be interesting for me.
Absolutely. We'll pass that on through Virginia if she doesn't mind. We'll get that to you. Thank you.
Giving me homework, Adam.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will absolutely get that to you.
Thank you. Any other further questions, comments? This is wonderful, and I would just kind of echo Councilmember Romano's. That area's got so much great potential and some good bones there, and it would really be cool to have to vitalize that area. So awesome. Thank you very much, Adam on the screen. Giving you a thumbs up, Virginia. Right?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and again, just to add, like this, once Virginia's off and on her new way, our intent, me and Mary Beth's intent, is to have this model just not for the ballpark. It's, we want to be able to lay this onto any development within the city and be able to walk through the checklist and, hey, is this a possible PPP? Is it not? Then we can go the way that we've always done it. But, it's hopefully going to be another tool in our tool belt that we can use for everywhere around the city. So.
Thank you very much. Awesome. Great.
Thank you.
Hey, have a great day. Okay, Council, we're moving on to item number, we have some board appointments coming up. So number 6, a board appointment for the Business Advisory Board, Rda Cardwell, and I'm probably going to be coming up on the screen. Can you hear us? I can't hear you though.
Unmute.
Oh, you're there. Well, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you, and thank you for volunteering to sit on the Business Advisory Board, and great to have you on our screen. So tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to be on this board.
Sure, great. So my name's Rda Cardwell. So I'm a transplant to Salt Lake City, originally from Vancouver, Canada, and went to the U of U and Salt Lake Community College in my undergrad, and recently just graduated from Harvard. And now I work at eBay as my day job, but my passion project, which I love doing, is running young professionals of Salt Lake City. So we do monthly events. We stimulate the economy. Last month, I spoke at the One Utah Summit about young professionals of Salt Lake City, where the state wants us to really focus in on the recruitment and retention of talent here in Salt Lake. We are no longer a flyover state. We are a destination. And that's what I want to help invoke and do more with Salt Lake, is I'm growing roots here. I'm never leaving Salt Lake City. So I want to make this the best city I'll ever live in for the rest of my life. And so how do I do that? And it's getting involved in what you guys are doing. And so every month we have events. So actually this Thursday, we have our first mix and mingle at Brick and Mortar Bar. So we have people coming in from outside the city, coming in to stimulate the economy and just join and participate and just grow their friend groups while they're here in Salt Lake. And so being part of the Young Professionals of Salt Lake City allows me to do a lot of things here in the city and make a lot of connections. And I met Roberta, I want to say 3 years ago, who I just reached out to about this role, and I saw it on the website, and I'm like, I should be on this because I do so much with the city. So it just made sense to just be an easy transition.
Thanks, and Roberta's right here, and she's got a big smile on her face, so thanks to both of you there. Any questions?
I just wanted to say thank you for, we go through a lot of board appointments and a lot of people, but you laid out a vision for our city and for the future that you want to help create, and I loved that. So thank you so much for for volunteering, but also having a vision for why you're volunteering. I really did appreciate that.
Oh, there's so much more too. So this is just a piece of it. So I laid out in stages. I have a plan, but that's for another conversation for another day.
Councilmember
Mr. Cardwell, I think we're neighbors. I live in the same complex. The same complex as you. It's nice to formally meet you, and thank you for representing our district.
Likewise.
Fowler.
Hi, Vignettes. Council Member Amy Fowler. I don't know if you could, how big your screen is can see it, but hey, I just wanted
around all the time.
Yep, I just wanted to say that if you've ever been to any of Vigne's activities, he brings that much energy and more to those activities. I make sure to follow him on Insta just so that I'm jealous of all the things that he's doing, because it's amazing, and like the passion that he has for Salt Lake shows in every event and every activity that he does, and it's quite inspiring, actually. So thank you for doing this, Vignette.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Amy.
Well, thank you for volunteering. Thank you for putting your name in the hat here. Appreciate that. You're going to be on tonight's consent agenda at 7 o'clock's formal meeting.
Okay.
You need not be there to win, but you're more than welcome to join us. So have a great evening. Thanks
all right.
again.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Have a good night. Councilor, moving on to item number 7, appointment for the Board of Appeals and Examiners, Lawrence Sugars. And he's on the screen. Yes, Lawrence, yes. Oh, yeah, come on up. Thank you. Thank you for volunteering, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Just give us a quick update on yourself and why you want to be on this board.
I've been in construction for over 50 years. I've done many of the fields. I was a student at a community college in Maryland, in Framing. I moved out here. I used to help teach at the community college, third-year plumbing. So I've been in all the phases. And then I worked for Salt Lake in 98. I got hired on. So I was in code enforcement. Then I went to the building department. Then I went to South Salt Lake, and I became the building official down there. So, and I can go on and on about me. I'm very good at that. So I've helped write codes. I used to be on a code change committee. I used to help, it was called Questar. You probably remember Questar. Now it's Dominion Energy. I used to help them teach fuel gas sizing and venting. So I've just been around for a long time, and I think I have a passion. Some friends of mine asked me to apply, and because of my passion, I thought, well, yeah, I'm retired, but I still enjoy this stuff.
Wonderful, thank you. Council, any questions for Lawrence? You're getting some good thumbs up, Council, my boy.
I just wanted to say that thank you for applying and for your service to this community. So looking forward to you joining this board.
So
I would be honored.
Yeah, thank you very much. As I told the other gentleman, you're going to be on tonight's consent agenda at 7 o'clock formal meeting. You need not be there present to win, but you're more than welcome to join our 7 o'clock formal meeting, and your name will be on that list.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lawrence. Have a great day. Okay, Council, we're moving on to appointment for the Board of Appeals and Examiners, George Reed, and that must be George on the screen.
Yes.
Hey, George, good evening, and thank you for volunteering to be on the board. Appreciate that. Give us a little background and why you want to be on this board.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for the opportunity, first of all. So my name is George Reed. I'm currently the Chief Building Official of Vineyard City. I don't know if any of you know where Vineyard City is. It's where the Geneva Steel site used to be. Over the last 10 years, Vineyard City has been the fastest growing city in the nation, which isn't too hard to do when you go from less than 100 residents to over 20,000 in that 10 years. So I was Vineyard's first building official. I've been serving in this capacity for the last little over 6 years. Before that, I was up in Park City working as their plan check coordinator and building inspector supervisor. I also have my own business that I did before Park City, where I inspect schools and do plan review on schools all throughout the state. I still do that on the side, mostly on the plan review side of things, where I review the schools that are state-owned. I have a bachelor's degree in construction management from Utah Valley University. I serve on a number of committees and boards. The reason why I was really interested in applying for this, a call was put out that they needed professionals to apply and serve on your board. And I teach for Salt Lake Community College for their continuing education programs and whatnot. And I also teach some classes, primarily ones that have focused on establishing Board of Appeals. And I've helped some municipalities establish their Board of Appeals. And I think it's a great process that's within the code. And I think it's underutilized. And so anytime I get a chance to put my money where my mouth is, I think I should. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thanks, George. Council, questions for George? You're off the hook, easy. No questions from our end. Thanks for volunteering, and thanks for all your experience. So I think we have two great experienced gentlemen who are going to be joining this board. Well, you're going to be on the formal agenda at 7 p.m. And no need to be there in person, but if you want to call in, you're more than welcome to do that. Have a great evening.
I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, George.
Mr. Chair?
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Can I just ask staff a question? And I should have noticed this before, but I'm noticing we're appointing all these people and their term is expiring the exact same time. Is there any thought about staggering the years that their terms expire so that the board doesn't all turn over at once? I know currently there's not really anyone on that board, and so we're rebuilding it, but if everyone's term expires June 14th, 2027, including the next two people we'll meet, should we think about that?
Yes, we should. You probably, I think you could do that as a separate action, couldn't they, Katie?
Sorry, I should have noticed this before, but.
Good
catch. Good, yeah.
Hi, council members. Great question. I'm guessing that the ordinance says that the initial term is for a set period of years. I think you could stagger them. You could also remember that our boards and commissions ordinance generally says that if somebody's term expires, they can continue to serve until another person is appointed. So you won't just lose everybody if those people want to continue to serve. We can take a look at your consent agenda and see if we can add some language about staggered terms if you would also like to do that, although since they're all being appointed at the same time, it's a little tricky for their term.
Thanks, Katie.
Thanks.
Thanks, George. We're moving on to item number 9, board appointment for the Board of Appeals and Examiners, Paul Hayward. Good evening, Paul. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Pardon?
Thank you for joining us this evening.
I consider it an honor.
Well, I appreciate that. As the other gentleman, give us a little history and your reasons for wanting to join this board.
Okay, let me turn up my hearing aid. What did you ask, sir?
Just give us a little history about yourself and why you want to join this board.
I'm a retired building official, fire marshal. I have been on 3 national code development committees. I've worked for 5 different local cities, 3 different states, 2 school districts and have worked for 17 years with my own firm providing code compliance activities. I've worked as both a full-time fire building official and a part-time volunteer fire marshal. So I've been around the block a few times when it comes to different issues of public interest and safety. My desire to serve is based on the fact that I believe that boards of appeal are citizens and applicants' administrative right when they think that something has been misinterpreted. And they have the right to appeal and to present evidence that they think that where their decision may have not been correct by the authority that made the decision. I've conducted several appeals. I've been the chairman of the West Valley City Board of Appeals. I conducted several appeals when I worked for the city of West Jordan, some when I worked the city of Farmington. And my attitude is you shake hands coming in and you shake hands coming out, and everybody remains friends, and you try and resolve the issue the way that the intent of the development of the code indicates that it should be. And not everybody always understands that in the same way. Thus, occasionally you have an appeal. And that's the citizens and the applicant's right. And it ought to be afforded them. And it ought to be convenient and not onerous. And it shouldn't ever be anything that produces a negative effect because they decided to appeal a decision.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions for?
My basic philosophy of why you have a Board of Appeals and why it's important.
Wonderful. Questions? No questions from this end.
I really appreciated what you had to say, and I think you'll be a great member of the board. And so thank you for volunteering. And that goes for you as well, Mr. Sugars. Everything that, it's fun to have applicants that have such a wealth of expertise and experience that they're willing to offer to the city and to help make our city a better place. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, I wanted to echo that. It always feels very comforting to know that a lot of people have experience here and you can see both sides, both government and also the development world out there, and try to find that balance when, there are appeals that maybe we missed something or maybe they didn't understand completely, but I know that you guys will be able to have great solutions for that board. So thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you, Paul. As I told the others, you'll be on tonight's formal agenda, on our consent agenda, at 7 p.m. You need not be there. You need not be tune in, but we'll be making that call and that vote at 7 p.m. tonight. So thank you very much for volunteering, and it's been wonderful hearing your philosophy.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Council, we're moving on to a board appointment for the Board of Appeals and Examiners, Tyson James Bell. And, Tyson.
All right, I got you now.
Oh, gotcha. Thank you for joining us tonight, Tyson, and appreciate your wanting to volunteer for the board. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to be on this board.
Yeah, thank you for considering me. I personally understand the need of the importance of having a Board of Appeals. My career has started in the front lines of actually in the trades and doing refrigeration, and then moving over to building safety in Saratoga Springs as a building inspector, and then moving up to Summit County as a building inspector and working my way up there. I saw a lack of safety occasionally in general contractors. And I found the opportunity to switch sides to go over to work for a general contractor and actually be on the front line with the general contractor and trying to build as safe as possible. Obviously, everybody being human, even architects, everybody makes mistakes, but being on site and trying to catch those mistakes during construction has helped out immensely. Sorry, lost my train of thought. I've saved a lot of time with actually working together with jurisdictions, helping them out, catching things before they've got into inspections, finding ways to help them when there is something that is misunderstood. Obviously, the code is very vague in some cases and black and white in others. I've personally ran into conditions where I just finished a $100 million project in Park City, and there's cases where there's not always the chance of having a Board of Appeals just because it's something that's not set up. I've personally been impacted with that. I got into this industry because I want to help out. I want everything to be as safe as possible. I love getting in debates with people on code. I go to trainings with a lot of these other gentlemen that's been in these meetings of the Utah chapter of ICC for inspectors. I want to help out however I can. I feel that I could be a great asset for this, just seeing the front lines and also on the side of development and construction.
Thank you very much, James. I appreciate that. Questions for, I think he sounds like you go by James.
Sorry, yes.
Okay, yeah.
my real name's Tyson.
I see no questions from you from our end. Thank you for volunteering. Thank you for being a part of a solution, and I appreciate that. You'll be also on tonight's 7 p.m. formal agenda. You can call in and listen in, but you need not be there. So have a wonderful evening, and thank you for your time and energy.
Yeah, you as well. Thank you, guys.
All right, have a great night.
You too.
Moving on to item number 10, or number 11, which is the report of the chair, vice chair. Councilman Romano, nothing? I have nothing. Cindy?
Just a couple of things. Some of you had expressed interest in attending the National Conference on Ending Homelessness in Washington, D.C. At the end of the month. And we have found that the conference is full. And so there aren't any opportunities to sign you up for that. We can put you on a waiting list. Last year we did, I should say last time, I don't remember the exact timing, but we did try to use the waiting list once before without success. So we'll just go ahead and put the names of the people who did express interest on a waiting list, and then we'll get back to you right away if we have any good results on that. Then also I wanted to just mention that you have the opportunity to meet with former council member Andrew Johnston and about homelessness issues. And you may really want to take advantage of that because legislators are regularly asking questions about the city's role in homelessness and things like that. And so it's pretty likely that the city and the county and the providers will end up in conversations with legislators. And so you might want to get the most current information from Andrew about what they have been talking about so far and what the various entities are looking at. So that our scheduling people can help you set those up. We have one tomorrow, and I think we have 2 people attending, but it might be 3. We have Councilmember Dugan, Councilmember Fowler, and Councilmember Valdemoros too. Okay. So anyway, we can get you signed up for those whenever, but it has been very helpful, I think, to have that opportunity. That's it.
Thank you, Cindy.
Sorry, you asked me to mention if council members could let us know when they will be out of town. A lot of people are planning on traveling. And if you could just share that, and if we'll be able to reach you or not, that will just help us to know what lengths to go to try to reach you.
And also just for the hybrid meeting, kind of we have an idea. So no tentative closed sessions. I know that's disappointing, but no tentative closed sessions. So the work session is adjourned. Do we want to start back up at 7 o'clock for the formal session? Okay, we're adjourned. Formal session starts at 7 o'clock, 1900 hours.